Despite having a reputation of being a social butterfly, CSU student Waylon Jepson doesn't often use his past as a way to reel people in. He doesn't use his stories to entice people at parties. Usually, people only experience the results of his past in the way that Waylon shows up, in the way he treats other people. I sat down with Waylon recently in his little apartment with minimalist furniture and lots of ginger to let Waylon tell his side of the story. Whether it be ugly or beautiful or inspirational, I didn't know. I just knew Waylon had seen some stuff that most 20-year-olds could only imagine. And I knew this stuff had changed Waylon forever, in a great way. We started the interview like every other day. Hi!
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing well.
Good. It smells really good in here.
Yeah, Melissa's got some snazzy candles going.
It smells gingery.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of ginger, so we do eat a lot of that.
We got comfy and we delved in. Tell me about jail time.
Okay. Jail isn't necessarily like designed to be the most comfortable of places to spend your time. The first thing you do when you get there is you go through intake. And intake is like a really, really bad version of the DMV, where you're in a really poorly constructed, not very accommodating waiting room, and you can't leave at all because you're about to go into jail. And it takes like 4 to 6 hours for them to get around to getting you processed into jail. That's actually booking. Intake is where you go right after that. So in booking, you spend like forever in booking, and then you get processed to go into intake. And intake is really interesting, probably the most interesting part of the jail that I spent time in, because everybody goes to intake, from like maximum security criminals to just like petty thieves, you know, to people who are in the wrong place in the wrong time.
At this point in the interview, there was pretty clearly a theme. Waylon centered most of his memories around people, how he perceived them, and his interactions.
There was a large variety of people there. As soon as you get into jail, everybody's like, oh yeah, I'm hard, don't mess with me. But when you get there, they take all your possessions, all your clothes, they strip search you, and they give you jail clothes, kind of like in the movies. And then they give you like this really funny looking toothbrush that is like completely anti-shank. It's like a flat flap handle and then a little brush at the end. It's kind of funny. Completely not able to anti-shank toothbrush. And then you get a mug and a bar of soap, your jail clothes, and then you get taken to intake. And intake is a cell-based section of the jail, and there's pods in intake. And so I was on the second floor and get put in little cells, also kind of like in the movies. They're about like 7 feet by 7 feet, pretty small. It's you and the cellmate and a bunk bed, and then a tiny toilet in the corner.
Waylon goes on and tells me about his cellmates and other aspects of his stay in jail. But I can't help but notice there are slight, tiny moments of self-reflection. Tiny slivers of time where you can see in his face that Waylon has just a tiny bit of regret.
It's pretty not the greatest.
I'm sorry about that.
My cellmate was interesting. I kind of liked him at first. He seemed cool. He was like, I need to get my life together. This is bad. Been hanging out with the wrong people. I was in there for some crazy stuff about an ex-girlfriend, or so he claimed. But then they switched us. I don't know why. And I got a new cellmate before the night started, and the other cellmate smelled really, really bad. He smelled really bad. And he looked like really nerdy, like a pudgy, nerdy kid. Um, and he had to use this machine to breathe at night that made him like sound like Darth Vader. So it was weird. And he wouldn't tell me why he was in there. And so that almost made it a little more scary. It's like, who is this very strange, nerdy looking pudgy guy who has trouble breathing? What did he do? You're allowed out of your cell into the common space, I think like 3 hours at a time. The rest of the time you're locked in your cell. And breakfast is at 4:30 a.m. So if you don't wake up for that, you kind of starve till the next meal. And so you gotta wake up for that, basically. And breakfast food is garbage. All the food is garbage. It's all just like mush. It's not the most tasty.
What was not uncomfortable but scary?
But I'd say like the most memorable part of intake before I got transferred to a nicer part of the jail was there was this guy who was in lockdown, meaning he was locked in his cell for 24 hours, and he would bang and scream on the window of his cell, and he didn't have half an arm. He had like a stub kind of like halfway down his forearm, and almost his entire body was covered in scar tissue. It kind of looked like Freddy Krueger, like his whole entire face. He had a lot of tattoos, and he wouldn't scream in English. I don't know what he'd scream in, but he'd scream and bang on his cell door a lot.
This was the point for Waylon where everything started feeling real. He was a college student and a convicted felon, and he would be spending 10 days in jail, including Christmas and New Year's.
It's like, oh, wow, yes, I am here in jail. This is where these people are.
Waylon was scared, but he made a very important decision. He decided to try to make the most out of jail. His time would not be wasted, and with the help of his lawyer, Waylon began to heal.
I was told by my lawyer that when I was to be doing my time to ask the guards to let me work, and that was all my lawyer told me. So next day, I asked the guard when he was coming around to work. I was like, hey, can I work? I want to work. Because the idea is if you work, you earn good time. And also you're doing something that's not being locked in your cell all day. So even if it's kind of like slave labor, it's a little bit better. And so I got transferred to a different section of the jail. They give you different color. Intake is red, and my color was white and brown after that. And it was it's called the Community Worker Pod. And it was way, way nicer than intake. There was still quite a few very interesting characters that I knew a little bit better than I knew anybody in intake because I spent most of my time in the Community Worker Pod. There was this really nice man named Keith, this like big black guy. He was super sweet.
Aw.
You know, he wasn't trying to start any trouble, and he knew the ropes, you know? Like, he was like, I'm in the nicest part of the jail, this isn't too bad, I'm in here just doing my due, being friendly, I don't want no trouble, I know what trouble looks like. And he had a very interesting story. He grew up in, like, LA, and was, like, selling real bad drugs most of his life, and he made a ridiculous amount of money for his wife and daughter, and then he got arrested and spent like 40 years in prison, and now he just kind of is in jail for petty crimes after he has a big criminal record of just like selling weed in Boulder and kind of living an impoverished, almost homeless lifestyle out of Boulder. And he seemed okay with it, which was strange, and he was very comforting. opposed to some of the other people in the jail who were kind of scary and aggressive. He helped me get other clothes and change of clothes and stuff to help me live, and give away his extra food every now and then to me. He was very, very nice. His name was Keith. But we all lived in kind of like a big warehouse with no windows, just all these bunk beds shoved together. A little bit more clothes because we were assigned to work out in the community. So I actually got to leave the jail every day to work out on government property. And we did a lot of trash pickup, we cleaned fairgrounds, we cleaned a lot of things that honestly didn't need to be cleaned at all and were just incredibly tedious work just to have something for us to do. At the time it was over New Year's, so we shoveled a lot of snow, raked a lot of leaves, and we dug a lot of holes in the garden too.
Thanks to some fantastic lawyers, and the fact that Waylon wasn't doing any of the drugs that he was selling, Waylon was able to do his time in just 10 short days. Although this didn't seem short to Waylon. It gave him a lot of time to think about how he was conducting his own life, and not just with drugs, but with everything. The person I'd seen host so many parties now stays home and plays chess. He cooks for his friends. He does hot yoga. He connects with people differently.
I'd say that I definitely still like have fun with social dynamics, but I'm also like way more considerate of the people that like I interact with, and I actually like care about them and their relationship towards me. And as a result, I've met some really cool people that I enjoy hanging out with. I've always really been kind of like a lone wolf when it comes to my social circle, though. Like, I develop a very large social circle, and I know a very large amount of people, and I like that, and I like knowing a lot of people, but I don't have like an inner circle, so to speak, you know? And I also like that because I like to learn on my own, you know? I don't want my knowledge to be like impacted by people who I'm close with. That being said, I still like have some good friends that I'll make dinner for and have over and hang out with. It's just not like a consistent group of people, you know? I really like to diversify the type of people I hang out with and get the most well-rounded impacts of personalities. I think that makes you learn a lot, and I'm all about learning and growth.
Waylon ended our time together by plucking a few strings on his guitar to show me what he'd learned. And in that time, I realized in my quest to find out whether Waylon exists or not, I learned two things. First of all, jail sounds terrifying. And second of all, people change.